We're constructing our top 12 tight ends for 2025 with an early look at our tight end rankings here on Fantasy Football Today Express. I'm Jamie Eisenberg. That's Dan Schneier. We're taking a look at our early top 12 rankings for 2025 at the tight end position. So, Dan, let's take a look at, we'll start with yours. We'll go through mine and maybe see if we changed our rankings. These were done, they were sent in right before week 18. We discussed them on the show previously on the full-length episode of Fantasy Football Today. And you can read the story on the site on CBSSports.com. So Dan's top 12 tight ends. We'll start 1 through 3. So Dan's top 3 are top 4. We'll go top 4 because they're very similar to what mine are. So Dan's top 4 are Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta as your top 4 tight ends. Now, you had something interesting that you just said on our full-length episode about Brock Bowers because he is our consensus. If you read the story, there's 6 of us that did rankings, you, me, Adam, Dave, Heath, and Jacob. I think that's 6. Right? No, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, there's 6 of us on the site that did those rankings. Everybody had Brock Bowers number 1, but you're a little bit concerned potentially about Russell Wilson as the starting quarterback if he ends up in Las Vegas, Pete Carroll as the head coach, maybe Darrell Bevell as the offense coordinator. Would you consider changing Bowers and maybe going McBride number 1?
I think no matter what, Bowers will be my tight end 1, but it will be a situation where I can see him drafted just outside round 1 in an area where I won't be in making that investment if the wrong system comes in there. A big part of Brock Bowers' amazing rookie season was they designed the offense around him. Like we've really never seen. You could say McBride is similar, but he, despite getting a lot of targets, the offense wasn't really designed around him. If it's a different offense, different quarterback, things will change for me.
And they could obviously add to their receiving core as well. Right now, Jacoby Myers, their number 1 receiver. I'm sure that they would like to upgrade that position, whether through free agency or the draft. So we'll see how that goes for the receiving core as well. But Russell Wilson, because of the Pete Carroll hire, is a potential quarterback option for the Raiders moving into 2025. So for me, it's Bowers, McBride, Kittle at number 3. And then I have Laporta number 4, Mark Andrews number 5. Andrews is number 6 for you. You have Kelsey at number 5. And right before we started the show, you said that might be one you're willing to move off of Kelsey in the 5 spot. Now, we have a lot of uncertainty. Clearly, the Super Bowl is still to come as they take on the Eagles on February 8th. Do you think if Kelsey comes back, he will be drafted as a top 5 tight end?
I think he'll be right in this range, maybe a little bit after Andrews. There might be some case to be made for some Kincaid hype in year 3. I'm not sure I can make that case. Hawkinson might fall into that healthy, right? Fully healthy for the season, but I think he'll be drafted in that range. The question is, will we ever see a different version of the last 2 years of Kelsey? Because I think you guys made the case for it. I didn't listen hard enough or strongly enough to look. They're saving him for the playoffs, and I think we're starting to see that that's really the truth at this point of his career.
Well, it was one great playoff game against the Texans, then a bad one against the Bills. Obviously, the Bills did everything they possibly can to take Kelsey away, and then we have what this offense could look like. With Rashee Rice back, hopefully healthy. We'll see if there's a suspension. What Xavier Worthy's looked like 4 of his last 5 games, and then does Kelsey just kind of come back? I said this on the show with Heath on our Dynasty episode. If the Chiefs win, I think Kelsey comes back because I don't think he wants to watch history potentially being made without him there if they're going for 4. And if they lose, I could see a more likely situation of him maybe retiring because, okay, we've had our run. I've had my Hall of Fame career. Do I want to go through this again? And Dave had a good point of maybe he just decides, no, I'm not going to play. Oh, it's November. We're challenging for the 1 seed again. Yeah, maybe I'll come back. Keep that roster spot open and I'll come back and maybe make a run. All right, so your top 6 guys, you have Andrews at 6. Before we take a break, why Andrews behind Kelsey? Why is he not a top 5 tight end for you?
It just comes down to the evolution of that offense, his role within it, what we saw throughout the season. Sure, he had a lot of touchdowns, but it's hard to chase that kind of volume for me.
All right, so the top 6 tight ends for you: Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, George Kittle, Travis Kelsey in pencil, and Mark Andrews at 6. For me, it's Bowers, McBride, Kittle, Laporta, Andrews, and then David Njoku. I like the setup for Njoku because it won't be Deshaun Watson, and he's been really good the last 2 years without Deshaun Watson. Joe Flacco in 2023, and the Jameis Winston quarterback crew that we saw for the Browns in 2024. All those guys just seem to be better for Njoku than Deshaun Watson. All right, we take a quick break here on Fantasy Football Today Express. We'll come back with the 7 through 12 rankings for Dan and myself of our 2025 early tight end rankings. All right, so let's start with 7 through 12 for you. It goes Dalton Kincaid at 7, David Njoku 8, TJ Hawkinson at 9, Jake Ferguson at 10, Tucker Kraft at 11, and Kyle Pitts at 12. And there are two guys in there that I think a lot of people look at and say, ew, I don't want to draft Kincaid after what we just saw. Forget about the playoff game, but the season. And then Kyle Pitts. So let's start with Kincaid. Do you think that there will be a year 3 breakout for him with the chance that the Bills maybe add to their receiving core? Maybe they don't, and maybe they just get stuck again with a Shakir, Coleman, Kincaid top trio at receivers.
No, not necessarily. I think if I thought the breakout was coming, I would have him ranked all the way up at 3 based on the talent that I saw on tape at Utah. At some point, you got to ask yourself, because this happens with some NFL players, has he caught up to the speed of the game, Kincaid? I know he's been injured. He played through 2 injuries this year, but the defenses he's facing now are not the same that he faced at Utah. And more importantly, if Brady is back there as offensive coordinator and play caller, this is not an offense that's designed to get him a lot of volume. So I would say no on that front. Still putting him decently high in the rankings, though, based on the talent.
And why Kyle Pitts in your top 12? He was the one player for me that I just can't rank as a
Yeah.
starter anymore.
It's really just a situation of when you get deep down into that 11, 12 tight end range, it's hard to find names with more talent than Kyle Pitts. And just me betting on upside at that point versus taking a guy who else, when you get to that range, it's really hard to find anyone who could really compete for a lot of volume, a lot of upside from a touchdown standpoint either.
So one guy for me who I have ranked
Yeah.
in the top 12 that you do not. And so here's my list 7 through 12. It's Travis Kelce at 7, Jonnu Smith at 8, Jake Ferguson at 9, Hawkinson at 10. And Hawkinson's the one that when we discussed the top 12 on the full length episode a few weeks ago, Hawkinson will be somebody that I do move up probably ahead of Kelce, just at his age and looking at the quarterback situation there. So it goes Kelce 7, Jonnu 8, Jake Ferguson 9, Hawkinson 10, Kincaid 11, and Tucker Kraft at 12. So what's your concern about Jonnu? Twofold. One, with what he did last season when everybody was there. 2, the chance that Tyreek Hill may move on.
Yeah, if Tyreek Hill moves on, we could probably see a similar system and plan of attack to what we saw this year. But I just think that will evolve back to what the Dolphins have done in the past, which is more vertical offense, better offensive line. They improved that. I'm looking to them improving that this offseason. And if that game plan does change, it really could minimize Jonnu Smith.
2 guys I want to ask you about before we wrap this up. So Jake Ferguson had a pretty rough season, no touchdowns. He was hurt, had the concussion situation. Obviously, Dak Prescott was hurt. What do you like about a bounce back season for him, knowing that it's going to be Brian Schottenheimer as the head coach?
Love Brian Schottenheimer for him. Brian Schottenheimer is going to bring a lot of run action. He's going to bring a lot of more 12 personnel. These are all things I think will help Jake Ferguson and help him become the check down for Dak Prescott in a lot of ways.
And then one guy who did not make the top 12 for either of us, but has had a pretty strong playoffs, and that's Dallas Goedert. And, he kind of has that, I think, safe floor, not necessarily the highest of ceiling when everybody's healthy, but we know throughout the last 2 seasons, at least, Devontae Smith has missed some time. A.J. Brown has definitely missed some time. Why not Dallas Goedert as a top 12 tight end?
I guess maybe he's someone I should have put in there, Jamie. The more I think about it, I think ultimately what it comes down to is there's not a lot of pass volume there, and plus his injury history that leads me to not getting too excited about moving him up.
I do think, if you're talking about floor versus ceiling, like Kincaid versus Goddard and Pitts versus Goddard, and even Jonnu Smith versus Goddard, it's a fun conversation because the upside clearly favors the previous trio of, Kincaid, Jonnu, and Pitts based on what we've seen. And Goddard just doesn't necessarily have that when everybody's healthy, but can give you that, 9, 10 point, per game situation, which is not a bad thing to have from a fantasy tight end. But we have a lot of time to discuss the top 12 tight ends, the top 24 tight ends. We'll have our rankings up on the site probably not too long after the Super Bowl. So you can see what our early 2025 rankings look like, not just tight end, but at every position, as we are certainly diving into the 2025 campaign right away. So for Dan Schneier, I'm Jamie Eisenberg. This has been Fantasy Football Today Express.